Hello, how is everyone doing today? Great. Well, my name is Mason. I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Engagement for BCC. We really appreciate y'all being here for the second installment of Community Conversations. We have a great show for y'all tonight. We're really excited for y'all to hear from our esteemed panelists and our wonderful moderator right here. Again, thank y'all for joining us, and I'm gonna let Lex take it from here.
Thank you, Mason. So I'm Alexis. I am the Treasury and Strategy person for BCC. So I'm just going to kick this off with letting each panelist introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Cydnie. Cydnie is the founder of Drink My May. So Cydnie, if you could tell us where you're from, your line of work, and any businesses that you run, can let you run with that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cydnie Smith-McCarthy, and I am a Portland, Oregon native. And I am the founder and owner of Drink Mame, which is a juice bar / wellness company here in Portland, Oregon on 1615 Northeast Killingsworth. And on the side of that, I am also a full-time social media marketing manager.
Cool, Domonique.
Hello, everyone. My name is Domonique. Everybody calls me Dom. Y'all can call me Domonique. These are the jokes. Y'all are so far away. We have to engage in some way. No, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having us. Currently, I work at Nike on the fitness and tennis side of the business, managing the footwear business for men's and women's. I do a whole bunch of things on the side, which I think we'll get into some of them later, so I'll spare them for now. Super happy to be here. And if y'all want to sit in the front row, it's okay.
Yeah, come on.
Little intimate crowd. Let's get
It's
close.
okay.
We all friends here? Like
We
high key,
friends.
actually friends.
Yes, there you yeah.
Cool, Alicia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Pinkney. I'm from West Philadelphia, born and raised.
In the playground.
By the playgrounds where I spend most of my days.
Let's go.
But I haven't lived in Philly in, I want to say, 8 years now. I just moved to Portland in August from Switzerland, and I'm currently a designer for Jordan. I design men's clothing. I'm also the founder of Black Talent in Design and Fashion Fund, where we give scholarship to Black and Brown students who are studying to enter the fashion and or footwear industry.
That's crazy. I'm actually studying to enter the fashion and footwear. You got money?
Yeah! Yes!
I need money.
Got you.
Let's go. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for being here today. I'm really excited, really happy to pick y'all brains and also just share like any knowledge y'all have, with the audience. So just to kick this off and give you guys an idea of like how I plan on running this today. This is the HERstory Makers panel. Obviously, this is about women, but specifically Black women, because we created all of this, period. So to be a Black woman in business, we know that before we walk into a room or when we even show up, our Blackness and our femininity is already in the room. But on top of that, what allows us to show up every day, continues to make us push ourselves, is our purpose. So that's kind of how I decided to envision this whole conversation. So we're going to talk about Blackness, femininity, and purpose today. And how that impacts you in your everyday life, in all of our everyday lives, and helps us continue to push and thrive. So today we're going to start off with Blackness, of course, because that's arguably the most important part of our identities. But specifically, we're going to talk about being Black in Portland. So let's start off with describing your experience as a Black woman in Portland. How did you find your community, and how do you see yourself showing up in your community? So whoever wants to start off first, you can kick it off.
I'll go last.
I'll go. So for me, I feel like as a Black woman in Portland, and a very new Black person in Portland, Black woman, Black person, I was really shocked when I first arrived here and seeing the lack of diversity from, coming from major cities. But granted, I had just moved from Switzerland, so I was like the only Black girl, and where I was. So I think that wasn't that much of a culture shock. But for me, what's the social interactions is what's kind of shocked me in a sense. And I always compare it to the book Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And I feel like as a Black woman, we have that same kind of similar experience of being invisible in this space. And granted, there's so many other conversations of, the opportunities that are available to Black women. But I think just in that social setting, it just feels very invisible. In terms of, I think the second part of your question was, how do we
how do you want to show up in this community?
For me, I feel like I've been slowly figuring out how I want to show up in this community. I'm very outgoing. I love people, and I've been able to find that passion within my life outside of work through community things and through my nonprofit. And one of the things that I'm really happy about, we just hosted our first Black Girls Brunch Club this past Sunday. And for me, I feel like I have a connecting spirit, even though I'm hella new here. But I just love people, and I love engaging and having one-on-one time with people. So if I can connect, even as the new girl, that's I feel is my purpose here.
Well, thank you.
I'll go. So being born and raised here, I feel like I was just born into the Black community. My grandmother had 12 kids, and then on my mom's side, my grandmother had 5 kids. So huge family, Sunday dinners, kind of the traditional Black family experience. And so I really didn't know that there wasn't a Black community, oddly enough, growing up in Portland, because between community center, family, church, everything, like I always felt a sense of belonging. But then growing up and traveling, then realizing, like I remember this one time I went on a high school college tour, and we were in DC, and we were on a bus, and we got on the bus, and they were playing Luther Vandross, and I was like, this sounds like my house. What? Like, this is what people experience in other places in the world. And so really traveling let me know, like, okay, Portland is not as diverse as maybe I experienced it. And then now living here, just seeing the gentrification, seeing how the Black community has kind of been just thrashed in terms of a sense of place. That for me now, in terms of your second part of your question, in terms of purpose, my job, or what I try to do, is one, let people know there are Black people here, and encourage people to find their community, whether it is through things that they like to do, their passions, whether it be hiking, enjoying the outdoors, whatever it is. Just trying to encourage people that there is a contingency of Black folks here. You have to go out and find them. And then on the flip side of that, really just being involved in a lot of conversations around city planning and resourcing, and making sure that the memory of what Black Northeast Portland was is not completely erased and eradicated, that people know Alberta, Mississippi, Woodlawn Park was not just your thriving Woodlawn Park. Like, there was Black families, Black people there, making sure people know the stories of Vanport and things like that, so it's not forgotten. So that's really what I'm into now, is just really trying to document the stories of Black people in Portland, and that it doesn't disappear. And it's like, oh, Mississippi Street Fair. It's like, no. There's some stories and some history before that.
Thank you.
Our experiences are very similar. I was born and raised here, and so I didn't know that there wasn't a Black community here because I was born into it. And my parents made sure that I was completely always surrounded by family, by friends that also looked like me. They're very, very intentional about that. Outside of school, because the schools here, I think that's where my first realization, like, oh, okay, Portland's not as diverse as like maybe my immediate group. My first take was it was in middle school and then in high school. I went to a small private arts and design middle school, and I did lots of dance and after school curriculars. And then I went to a private Catholic high school, and that was, oddly enough, predominantly people of color. But it was still ran by very much an administration that was very white. So it's an interesting it was interesting dynamic getting to know like how white people view even black kids growing up. So that was like kind of like my first take. And then again, traveling, when I went to college, I went to a different college, and I saw people from all over the world at the college that I went to. And so my first, traveling outside of Portland, I was like, okay, so there are more people than where I'm from, and there's also more diverse communities than where I'm from. And then also the gentrification. My family specifically, like my uncle Jeffrey, he was a big community leader here in Portland, Jeffrey Brooks. And then my dad, LaShawn McCarthy, he was a very big community leader here as well. And then my grandmother, Carolyn Young, she has a building named after her on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And so my family has always been very big pillars of this community. And so as default, I was also a big part of the things that they were into. And then on a more history note, like my great grandparents always like instilled this into their kids, and my grandma says it all the time. We were the first group of black people to move here when they allowed us to live here. So that's a big thing, and that's something you should take pride in. because we built a name for ourselves here. And my great grandfather, who lived in Birmingham, Alabama, he at the time his house was burnt down by the KKK, and they migrated here. And so my family is like embedded in Portland, but I've also seen Portland shift so much. So I think my purpose is like to continue lineage, but to also teach wellness and just the spirit of Portland to continue on while I'm here. So I think that's like my purpose here.
The one thing once very unique about the Black community in Portland. So your dad was my SCI coordinator for a number of years as I was growing up, and I just now meeting her today. So that just gives you an idea of the degrees of separation in the Black community here is very tight knit.
That's crazy. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he was everybody's coordinator.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, thank you all for your contributions to Black Portland. I mean, honestly, y'all are the reason why a lot of us are happy to be here, especially me, myself. I just came here in September. I'm excited to, pop out to drink my May. I'm excited to, pop out to that brunch and get some drinks and drink my May. So, I mean, thank y'all. So the next thing I want to hit on is cultural appropriation. We all know that's something that's big. Our culture is constantly jacked. We're deemed as ghetto whenever we do a lot of things like, braids and stuff like that. So I would say in terms of cultural appropriation, can you talk about how you feel as a Black woman today, seeing non-Black girls get fame and clout for the things that we do, the things that we've been doing since we were kids, and that we're deemed ghetto when we do it?
It's triggering. It is so triggering. I think it's triggering, but I also think that like over the years I've learned to not give it energy. I think there's a lot of things that we give too much energy to, and specifically like one thing that grinds my gears is white women with braids, with box braids. Like that's just one of those things that people argue, but there really is no argument. And I remember being in middle school and being asked to take my braids out. And then in high school, it was my first encounter with a white girl that I was friends with, and she had box braids. And I was so upset because I didn't get box braids for a while because I was asked to cut them.
Crown Act.
Yeah, and Portland had I don't know too many stories in Portland about that, but I went to a private Catholic high school, so they had their own little set of rules, and they always are making new rules. And but that's where that part of cultural appropriation, among a lot of different things, are something that I personally I try not to give too much energy to, but it hits a nerve. It really hits a nerve, especially because we're like we just passed the Crown Act. And there are kids who can't even enjoy their education without getting harassed about their hair when it's not doing anything to anybody else. So that's yeah.
For sure. Do y'all have anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, I think that one of the first things that you mentioned is when we walk into spaces, the first thing that speaks to us is our Blackness. And for me, to tie those two together, because there's a synergy for me, I'm going to get there. But I just feel that, having that state of being of like, okay, when we walking around, people automatically see you as a Black person before they get to know you. They just assume that you're all these list of characteristics because you're a Black person. And for me, I feel like you said, the moment we're dressed the way we're used to dressing in our culture, that's that other layer, like, oh, they're the Black person characteristics and they're also ghetto because look how they're dressed. And then you see like high fashion, a lot of luxury brands who are tapping into the streetwear industry and, slapping that luxury label on it and making it streetwear. However, we have things like the Crown Act and all these other things in terms of dress code that, Black women, that's our identity. But we're always, told or looked a certain way when we dress in that way. But it's become very fashionable when others wear it. So it is, like Sid said, it is triggering. But you can't put so much energy into all these things because then you'll be just like a depressed, down and out kind of person. So it's like recognizing it and not let it consume you. But it's out here and it's very alive and real, I feel, especially in the fashion industry.
Yeah, I agree with both of what they said. And the only thing that I would add is I think that gives us a unique place as Black women in the industry because there's a fine line between appropriation and appreciation. And now that everybody knows how to maximize or commoditize our culture. If we can get in those rooms and be the voices and be the ones that can do it in an authentic way, then I think it kind of changes the narrative a little bit, and we continue to own our own story. I think the personal opinions of folks of like what's ghetto or what's in style or who is the person who started braids. We know Kim Kardashian didn't. All of those things, like I think that those are the things that you just kind of have to shake off and let go. But I would just encourage people in this room of like knowing the importance of the Black story, the Black style, Black culture, and that big companies want to capitalize on that. They want to continue to push and market towards us. And so owning that power in the rooms that you're in and being the voice in the room, and then making sure people know of like it coming from me makes it authentic. If you shut me out and you're not listening to me, that's when it crosses that line of appropriation. So I think it's kind of a two-way thing of like knowing it's a problem, and then how do we as people continue to move through that and navigate it and help it kind of work for us, and then continue to celebrate our culture. I think it's an opportunity as well.
Do you think there's any way that we could protect it? So, I mean, kind of seeing like, you have like people like you're saying, like the hair. I think that's like the biggest thing, one of the biggest things we've been seeing. Obviously, we also saw like Virgil's apparently a hip hop designer, whatever that is. So, is there any way that you guys think, or you all think, that we can protect our, I guess, intellectual property as Black people?
I think
I was gonna say something maybe a little pessimistic, so if you got a lighter note.
Oh, I got a little lighter note,
Okay.
but we still like to hear that side. 'Cause I think we need to be raw and transparent here. But I want to say just being authentic to yourselves, because something that Sid mentioned is she stopped wearing braids or didn't want to wear it because she was told not to wear it. And I feel like oftentimes, especially Black women in these spaces, I don't do that. I don't water down myself. I come up who I am, and that's how I've always been. But some women water down who they are because they need to fit into these white spaces. So I would just say be authentic to yourself and don't water that down, because the moment you start watering it down, then we got the other people who aren't Black, they're getting celebrated because they're seeing the culture in the room that's not represented on you because you chose to water down who you are just so you can make yourself fit into this white space.
Facts. I was just gonna say is in terms of protecting our intellectual property, it's kind of too late. Like the cat's out of the bag, the dollars, the numbers, like we can see it and it's on paper. And a lot of these businesses, they're gonna follow the numbers, right? But to what Jessica's saying, like we need to make sure that we are the ones showing up authentic in those rooms. Like we're not shying away from who we are in any shape or form, because it's powerful. And if it wasn't powerful, then it wouldn't be represented on every billboard, or you scroll down Instagram, you see it. So, it's kind of a nod to be authentic to who you are.
I also think that it's up to the individual because, like you said, it's kind of too late. I think because of a multitude of different reasons, history being one, white people definitely got a head start on taking culture and appropriating it and making it fashionable, and making it seem like it's a street fashion or that they created it, even though they got it from Black people and our resources and what we kind of had to do, how we used our artistic abilities and our resources and our ability to use the things that were in front of us in order for us to survive in the society. And they got a head start on that and decided to create Nike, Adidas, all of these brands all across the country. So I think at this point it is too late, and I think that's just real. But I think also it's up to the individual, and I think exactly what Alicia said, being authentic to yourself and being okay with, okay, like this person. And I try, and again, it grinds my gears, but I try not to give it too much energy because I know at the end of the day I am Black and I know where it came from. And so just like being okay with that and being okay internally with that and then living it loud, that's just how you protect yourself and your personal intellectual property, because there's it's everywhere. Appropriation is everywhere.
And I
Amen.
think one thing too is like knowing like Blackness is more than our fashion, our hair,
Yeah.
our style, the way we talk. Like it's so knowing our history, knowing who you are, knowing the meaning and the why behind it. I think that is where you kind of can take solace of like somebody can dress like whoever they're trying to emulate, but without the inherent like authentic understanding of what that represents and what that is, like it means nothing.
Mhm.
So just holding on to the fact of like, who you are, or I know who I am. So no one can walk in a room and bring what I bring to the table, regardless if we all dress the same or we all listen to the same music. We all watch Insecure. It's like we're not the same. And like understanding that and just walking in that kind of understanding more so of like this is at this point propaganda, marketing, like these are tools. Yeah. It's not representative of the deeper why of who I am, knowing the stories of our ancestors, our grandparents, like that's who we are, not what we dress like, etc.
Thank you. Thank you all. Mom, I know you're on YouTube right now, so I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm not flat ironing my hair for graduation next year. We don't gotta do that no more. Period. We're not putting heat in our hair for nothing. We can pin the cap on. So the next topic we're gonna get into is femininity. So my first question is gonna be, how does your femininity affect your work that you do every single day? So how does it show up in your work? How do you prioritize it? Just however you feel.
Yeah, I try, like for me, I try not to let the fact that I work in a white male dominated industry define who I show up as, how feminine I can be, or do I have to carry this certain bravado to keep up with the boys, or even the opposite end of the spectrum of like, I don't either have to be bitchy to be in a room to like get people to listen to me. So really just, again, going back to who am I and how do I want to express myself in the truest and most authentic form, irrespective of maybe what this environment may say I need to show up as, or how this environment may think that I need to show up as to be successful. And I think the more, like, as women, we continue to find who we are and own our power as women and not kind of succumb to one box or another, it just creates room for all of us to be ourselves. And I think that's the thing that I'm seeing now is you have more representation of women across the spectrum versus back in the day, it was like, oh, the woman at the head of the boardroom, oh, she must be a bitch. Like, that's the only way she got there. Or you have the woman in the room is like, oh, she's a secretary, she's quiet, she's gonna just do everything. And now you're seeing more of a wider expression, which then just gives people power to come in and be like, I'm the one that's gonna have an idea. Like, I'm the one that's gonna lead the conversation. I'm not gonna acquiesce to the back of the room. And then that being defined as feminine, whereas before it was like feminine meant one or two things.
I think there's two parts to this as well. I think it's that level of authenticity and how you show up. And I think I'm just going to keep repeating that tonight because that's just really important, that authenticity. But also, I had a chance to interview a British author she wrote a book called Why Men Win at Work. And basically, in that book, it really outlined like why women make good leaders and all these things. And I think so many things without having that black and white stereotype of women have this certain kind of characteristic and men don't. I think the biggest thing that women have is, and not to say that men don't have it, but is our empathy and the fact that we're able to balance so many things. And with that being said, we can wear so many hats. We're multidimensional. We make good leaders in that sense. We are a good people person because we have that empathy level as well. So I think just showing up who you are without even the femininity part. But then if you want to add that layer, I think it's so many characteristics that are innate in us that makes us really great for the workplace. And unfortunately, some people don't see that. And that's why we're in very male-dominated spaces. Fortunately, some people do see it. And that's why people get promoted. And hopefully it's not in, like you said, in a bitchy way, like, oh, she's this type of person. That's why she's in that space. So that's my two-part answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's authenticity again. Just being yourself. I think for me, in the space of being an entrepreneur, I think that being entrepreneurship is very, especially at a certain level, it's very male dominated, and I find that there are a lot, specifically here in Portland, there's a lot of men business owners, and then there's a lot of black men business owners, but there's not a lot of black women business owners, right? And so I think that I often have to show up as me, as being Cydnie, as being a woman, as being a black woman, and black woman first always, because there's that space is not represented in this town. There's a lot of black women owned businesses here, but a lot of them are still in their homes, and that's where 90% of black women businesses start, is out of their homes, and most of them are still there. And so in spaces where there's not a lot of black women owned anything, like where there's brick and mortars and storefronts and things like that, or in spaces where there's lots of money or talks of money, or like exchanges of that going on or being able to access those things. So I think that authenticity is where I show up the most, and because I don't see myself often in that space. So I also, there is a level of, I make sure that I show up as me, but I also think that I show up and I represent a whole group, a whole demographic. And so I just make sure that that's the authenticity within me, who I am, shines first. And I think that speaks for the femininity as a whole.
I think that transitions well into my next question for you all. Pay gap. We also know that all women are typically, or most women are typically paid less than men. But on top of that, Black women are paid less than non-Black women for the most part. So how do you ensure that you're getting paid what you're worth? And on top of that as well, I know you all have your own businesses as well, making sure that you're getting like fair deals. You're not getting, shorted in comparison to men.
Hold people accountable and ask a lot of questions and do your research.
Period.
All three of those things. All three of those things. Because I think if you don't hold people accountable and if you don't do your own research, someone will try to lowball you. But if you come prepared for whatever it is, whether it's a job offer, whether it's a engagement that someone's like, they need your Black face there and they're trying to pay you, come with research and also come with your own price. I think people get shocked when you do that because they're so used to women settling, especially Black women. Because they're like, oh, we're doing you a favor. We're being that white savior and giving you this opportunity. So you should just be happy with anything. Absolutely not. I know my worth. And I know, I know what I deserve, and I know what you're paying other people who do the bare minimum. And not to say that other people are always on the bare minimum, but you get my point. So I think for me, it's really important and crucial that it's very uncomfortable, it's very awkward sometimes, but you got to do it. And I think if we all can have that same reputation of approaching situations like this, maybe we can cut out that person of trying to lowball us because they're going like, oh, I know I can't play with them. I got to make sure, so in an ideal world, I think.
No, that's real. I mean, the other thing I would say is like, as Black women, Black people in general, we're kind of conditioned not to talk about money. Like, it's just a taboo topic. But I found that in the circles of people that I'm around, them telling me how much they're getting paid and when they got that salary helps me understand, okay, like that's what I should be making, or I need to go ask for that. And so having that conversation amongst your peers and making sure you're having it kind of like for like, not I've talked to this VP and they're getting paid this, like why am I not there? But making sure that as the people in your circle that you're growing up with, like having those conversations of like, where are you? Okay, wow. And not in a competition or not in a now I'm side-eyeing you like, oh, okay, well, you got that purse because it's like, no, I'm trying to understand so that I know how to then go negotiate. And then I also would say like making sure you know what you're bringing to the table, especially if you're working in a corporate environment. There's been a couple critical times in my career where I've like, all right, I'm gonna go sit down. I meet with my finance person every 2 weeks because I want to know what my business is driving, how is it contributing to the overall Nike Inc. or whatever company I'm making, so that when I want to go have a conversation, I can say, hey, we grew our business this %. This is what I contributed. This is how we're contributing to the overall Inc. portfolio. Help this make sense in terms of a salary. And so I would say know your numbers and what you're delivering. Be very keen and aware of how your market value as well. Another thing that I do, Ellen, close your ears, but I interview every year because I want to know, like, what's my market value? Am I kind of getting lowballed here? Am I stagnant here? And you want to stay sharp and be aware and just have an understanding. I think it's easy to kind of put your head down and just kind of expect things to come to you. But you will be, as a Black woman, responsible for your own salary. You have to get on the forefront of it. Hopefully there's a time where it's just going to fall at your feet. But right now we're not there. So you got to be that one. I think there's a meme of a person kind of like putting on clown makeup. And they're like, me working, doing my job hard, thinking that's going to be the reason that I get paid what I deserve. And so if that's your mentality, like you're putting on clown makeup, you have to be that voice and an advocate. And then also using your kind of mentors or using the people that are helping you in your career to have conversations on your behalf. I also have been fortunate to have some leaders and mentors like kind of have a conversation with my manager and say like, hey, is Dom getting paid fair? Can we pull the numbers? And them having a conversation that I didn't have to have. So being able to have mentors that you can be honest with, if like I'm concerned about my salary, or hey, I just think I should be here. Can you help me understand? But have that conversation, I would say, a couple times a year, and don't shy away from it. Like, make your manager or whoever's managing you uncomfortable, if that's what needs to happen, but get comfortable talking about your money.
I think like on the the like in my experience, I think first the one thing that I've learned is when people, because a lot of the times people will reach out to you and like, hey, we want you to do this, hey, we want this from you, we want that, and they already have a set number in their head, and they have like they've already presented it to you. But I think the number one thing that I've learned is to say thank you for reaching out, let me take a second and think about this, so that way you can get opinions from people. And I also have a good core group of people who are also entrepreneurs, who are in some similar spaces or have been presented with similar things. And so I take it to them and I'm like, hey, so this person is offering this. What do you think? And one really big tip that I got from actually my friend Bima is he said, already have your price in your head. Like if someone's going to reach out to you about something, about doing a partnership or having your juice somewhere, or know what your numbers are, know where your minimum is and what you're not willing to take, right? So that way when they come in those spaces and you can assess it. Is this a good opportunity for me to have exposure but also get paid like maybe a little bit less because this is going to be a greater opportunity overall? Am I going to meet a lot of good people? Maybe this is worth it. If it's not that, then go the other way. But I think having those conversations with the people around you, and I'm very lucky to have very strong Black men in the same spaces as I, who are really good at advocating for themselves and for their paycheck, because then they have taught me from their experiences, and they're very willing to give me any information that I need, and also advocate for me if I feel like I can't advocate for myself, that this is what I deserve to get paid, or this is what my business deserves, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not always about what I'm personally taking home, it's what my business can withstand. And so when people are like, hey, we want 100 juices, but hey, we only got like a $30 budget, sorry, I can't help you. You know what I mean? Like, it's always just having that in your head. Like, if this person wants this, like they want us to also be there, but that means I have to have people there. That means I'm paying payroll. I'm paying somebody to be there. Then if they want juice, then I have to hire someone to make that juice. We also have to have that transported. Like, thinking about all those things and having your business processes and operations in line, and knowing what that costs you, so that way you know what to charge them, is key. Knowing your numbers, doing your research, and knowing how much work you're going to put into it. So I think it's all about like self-knowledge. I think being super self-aware too of what you're putting into and what your value is at the end of the day. Because if they're reaching out to you, you're valuable to them in some way. And most times people are willing to negotiate. And that's something that I've also learned. Don't ever take the first offer. Always negotiate, always talk it through, always. And if they can't pay this, then this is all I can give you, right? But just having that number in your head and being confident and being okay with taking the information, thinking about it, and coming back into it, not feeling like you have to automatically answer. I think that's like the biggest thing, especially like moving into spaces as an entrepreneur. I think when I was working corporate, and I still am working corporate, but in corporate, I think for me, I find it easier because of my experience, and I can show numbers and things like that. But as a new entrepreneur in a new space, you don't know necessarily what you're worth or what your value is. So that's like the biggest thing that I've learned in that area.
Thank you all for that. Hope everybody took notes on that. I'm gonna go back and watch the YouTube because those some gems. So besides money, we also know that purpose, that's what really gets us. That's what wakes us up every single morning. That's what drives us. That's why we are here right now. I would assume that, this is a part of my purpose, I think. So my question for you all is, what does purpose mean to you, and what do you think your purpose is? I know that's hard. Y'all could take a second.
I'll go. I feel like purpose is really just about for us as humans, why we're here, our reason of living, breathing, what we're doing, like what's that next thing what's that goal that we're working towards, like to be fulfilled. And I feel like I've definitely found my purpose in the last couple years. Like I love design. I've been in design pretty much all my life. Always been creative, always been in this space. But I think founding my nonprofit helped me add another layer to my purpose because I'm very creative, but I'm also very humanitarian. I love people. I think that's the Aquarius in me. I don't know. I just love people, and for me, I love giving back as well. So when I was able to create the Scholarship Foundation in 2020, I think that was like my silver lining and finding my purpose and making everything come together. Because for me, as much as I'm a career person, I don't want that 9 to 5 to be my only sole purpose in life. And granted, that has never been me. I've always been involved in some kind of a people to people kind of thing throughout my life, whether it's like in school, I was president of my high school and, leading events and things like that. So I just needed to find that connectivity. And I'm still young. I'm only 31. So I feel like I'm still finding my purpose. But in this moment, in this season that I'm in right now, I think this is the purpose in this season. And granted, I feel like as I get older, that purpose will evolve into other things. But currently in this current season, I think my purpose is people, giving back to people, connecting with people, whether it's energy or, events like, their brunch. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you.
I think that um, I think my purpose, and I agree with you about different seasons. I think I've had different seasons, and I'm also young. I'm only 28. Well, I'll be 28 next Wednesday. And I think that my purpose in this particular part of my life would have to be giving back, teaching people, educating, and kind of, I think like, especially with my family, like I am the first full bred entrepreneur in my family. Everybody else has tried certain things but has not pushed themselves far enough to get to like the space that I am in. And I see that like even like my siblings are thinking of doing like the same type of things, like being an entrepreneur, like asking me questions and things like that. And so I think of in a lot of spaces, I'm like the first person that they've seen do it, like out of, in front of their eyes. And so I think that that's kind of my purpose, is to teach. And that's like one of the things that I love doing, is giving information. I am not a gatekeeper whatsoever. Like if you want to know something, I want to give it to you, absolutely, like, and connect you to all the people to be able to give you the things that you need in order to thrive. So I think that that's really my purpose in this season, is to learn and soak in and take in the information and then share it and give it back, because I think that's the only way that, specifically like Black people, that's the only way we thrive and move forward, is with our connections with each other. So I think like honing in on that and really living that and breathing that and giving back as much as I get, because I feel like I receive a lot, so I want to give a lot. So I think that's my purpose here.
Thank you.
I love that. The way that I define purpose is, I think it's your most authentic why. It's the thing that outside of society, outside of what people may tell you or put on you, like it resonates the most deeply with you, uniquely. And for me, I made a purpose statement a couple years ago. And for me, that is to create pipelines to help people access the highest version of themselves. And so that comes to life through mentoring. It comes to life through things that I do through work, my not scholarship that I created, time that I just spend making sure that I'm pouring in the lives of young people. Just taking the time out really to answer as many LinkedIn inquiries as they come. But also more so than that, like now with the position that I'm fortunate to have at Nike, really focusing on, from a programmatic standpoint and from just a corporate structure standpoint, changing some of the things that may keep or alienate folks who don't fit the kind of corporate mold from getting in. So that's really where I spend a lot of my time now, just trying to have conversations of like, when I'm gone and no longer talking about these things, when so-and-so is gone and no longer talking about these things, how do we change the fabric of at least the company that I'm at now, some of these things that have existed and kept folks out, which is a lot of hard conversation, but it's worth it. And it's baby steps. And so as I'm in that work, something that I constantly remind myself is about patience and practicing empathy as much as I give it out to other people, giving it to myself. So that would also be something for y'all, is that when you find your purpose, you're going to feel it deeply. And it's going to be like, oh my gosh, like I want this to change right now. And that's beautiful. But give yourself empathy, practice patience, because it's going to take time. It's going to take diligence. It's going to take a lot more voices and hands than your own. So don't beat yourself up when you find it. And just be at peace with the baby steps, really something else that I try to do is just find a moment of the day of like, okay, how did that connect to my purpose? Whether it's a small thank you that somebody got. Like we were just in Miami doing some stuff with some kids, and one of the students really, she's Cuban, and so she was really inspired just by being in the city, and she was like researching all these bakeries the whole time, but it just wasn't baked into our schedule, and I was like, I'm gonna find a way to take her to one of these Cuban bakeries. So her and I dipped off and did it, and she was like in tears, like, oh my gosh, you have no idea how much this meant. And I mean, they had a phenomenal, like, I can't say everything, but they had a phenomenal trip, and for her, that was like the highlight. And so that again was a reminder of like, oh, I've created a pipeline for her to see herself. So that's my little soapbox. And I also would say I am young as well. I'm 36. So whatever age you are, feel that youthful energy and know that there is something for you to do at every stage of your life.
I think kind of piggybacking on what you were saying about like it's not going to happen essentially overnight. How do you handle self-doubt? I think everyone here has nonlinear career paths. I mean, myself, I just quit accounting, thank God, to go back to school. And I honestly experience self-doubt every single day, wondering, okay, why did I give up that 9 to 5? So how do you all deal with it?
For me, I'm very personally faith-driven, and I feel like everything that happens in my life happens for a reason. And not to get too churchy in here, but where God guides, He supplies, and that's been my entire life. So for me, I've never had regret. Like literally, I was in overseas for 6 years, and I decided to disrupt that overseas experience and come move to Portland. And sometimes I question, like, why did I do that? But it's engraved in my head that where God guides, He supplies. So I'm even in this very seat right now. I'm like, why am I here? But for me, I'm just trying to just continue to walk in that purpose that we talked about earlier, and understanding that throughout my life, all these places I lived, there's been a reason and a purpose in that moment that I was there. And it doesn't mean that I'm chained to Portland right now. I don't know how long I'll be here, but I think for me, just understanding the bigger purpose, and understanding that goal setting that you have for yourself, that that doubt can slowly like move away with other things that you have happening.
Come on, Pastor Pinkney.
That part.
Right.
I would say that doubt has to be a part of the process. And if you're not feeling doubt, then you're not trying to do anything bigger than yourself, right? Like that's also an indicator. I think sometimes it's like, oh, I doubt, can I do that? The doubt shouldn't make you feel like you're not the person to do it. The fact that you're doubting it should be an indicator that, wow, like I really feel the power of what this is. I feel the weight. I feel the responsibility. Oh, wow, this has the ability to impact more than just me. And if you can embrace it as like, this is an indicator that I need to go forward versus an indicator that you should stop, you just can move through it. Like one of the things that I'm learning is a lot of these emotions that we kind of quote unquote call negative is like, those are things that we have to learn as we mature and grow to move through. And those things can work for you. And then also like, don't worry about failure. Would be another thing, because that also is a part of the process. And I think sometimes we're like, put all this pressure on us to be great at the beginning, but that's just impossible. You will not be great unless you go through doubt and failure and start again and start over and do it differently. And so be okay with failing. Just take the right inventory from that experience and what do you want to carry forward? What do you want to get rid of? And know that when you start again, you're starting now with that experience and you're starting better. So I think if you can hold true to those two things, you can move through doubt. And then also one thing that I do is like I let myself have like 30-minute pity parties, which I love. And, put on some sad music, whatever you need to do, go there, like yell, call, whatever friend is the pettiest, and have a full-on pity party and like cycle through the fullness of that emotion and then move on. So I limit myself to 30 minutes. You might want longer pity parties, but they're necessary, I think, too, and to not ignore just the realness of being a human. Like sometimes things suck. So but I would encourage you, have a really good pity party. Like don't just have like a boring, a terrible one where you kind of complain. Like go in and then come out. So yeah.
Can I just quickly jump in on that failure bit? Because I think in this age that we're in right now where everything's so instant, you can see everyone's lives, we think that people's story there was no failure. And for me, I'm a product of failure. I'm a product of no's. But honestly, I feel like a lot of those no's were they were the best decision, or not even my decision, other people's decision for saying no to me. I didn't know at the time that was the best decision in my life. Like people saying no to me, like that's how the next thing was something better. And it was like, oh, you really wanted that. And it was like, no. And then this next thing was waiting for you. So don't get caught up in a season where you do have failure, because there might be something better waiting for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got my dad passed away in 2018, but he always was a big person of when you feel doubt, count your wins, because we would do this thing, especially because I played soccer and I was always just so frustrated with how the games would go. And he was like, yeah, okay, like you guys lost today by 5. That's great, but let's count your wins. Like what did you achieve in soccer this week? And I'm like, oh, well, I made a goal in practice and I did it. And so that has been like stuck in my head for years, was whenever I feel any moment of doubt, like go through the last year, the last 2 years, like 3 years, what have you done that is making yourself proud? What have you done that has continued to help you move forward? What have you done that has made you proud? And that always lifts my spirits and kind of gets me out of doubt. Doubt is not something that you can run away from. It's not something that's never going to be there, like especially as you move through different phases of life. And sometimes there's certain parts of life that you're not going to know anything about. When I started my juice bar, I knew nothing about running a restaurant. I was like, yeah, let's just try it. Like, what do we got to lose? Like, cool. Like, I like food. Or I like juice, I make juice at my house all the time, but it wasn't like a professional juicer or anything like that. And I was bootstrapping my business from the checks I was making from my full-time job. So, it's all a learning process, but just like continuously moving through barriers and like, registering that doubt as fear and not letting fear stop you from the things that you really want to accomplish in life and just moving forward. But I do think doubt is inevitable. Like you always doubt yourself. Like you doubt if the lipstick on your lips looks good on your skin, or if the shoes you're wearing goes good with your shirt. Like there's always going to be doubt, but just making sure that the decisions that you're making are intentional, and also that those intentional decisions are going to propel you forward and make sure that you're constantly doing things that may be scary, may be doubtful, but they may be worth it also. So
thank y'all all for that. Everything. A word. So I'm gonna wrap this up with some rapid fire questions. Y'all didn't get to prepare for this, thank God. So I'm gonna do probably like 3 of them. First one, let's go with your favorite product release that you worked on.
my business.
Period.
Tiana Taylor, GLC.
I would say, well, it's not even at Jordan. So at Timberland, one of the collections I worked on, we brought it to London Men's Fashion Week for the first time, and it was a whole runway show of like Timberland men's apparel. So that was like my favorite thing in my career right now.
Fire. Let's see, sugar or salt and pepper on grits?
On what?
Sugar or salt and pepper on
You better
grits?
not put no sugar on them grits.
You gotta go.
No,
you gotta
no
go.
Sugar. We need salt and pepper. We need a savory grit over here.
I put sugar on my grits.
This is not cream of wheat.
That's where sugar belongs, is on grits. See, this is always a controversial topic.
That's called cream
That's
of wheat.
oatmeal.
That is cream of wheat.
That's
Yes.
cream of wheat,
Cream
fam.
of wheat.
That's cream of wheat.
Y'all are wild.
That's
That's
oatmeal.
cream of wheat.
Y'all like savory grits?
Yes,
Yes.
with shrimp,
With
shrimp
the
and grits
shrimp,
and
yes.
butter.
Okay, that's a different. Okay, that's not breakfast.
That's
I'm
still
talking
grits.
about breakfast. It's
They
supposed
put
to
salt
be
and pepper on that.
sugar, butter,
That's
and
called
then
cream
Have
of
you had cream of
wheat.
wheat
That's
before?
not cream.
That's
Cream
cream
of
of
wheat's
wheat,
nasty.
fam.
Why are we arguing about this?
You
y'all?
probably do brown sugar too, huh?
No. Why would I put brown sugar on grits? Okay, well, clearly it's salt and pepper or whatever y'all
Can
do.
you drop your address? We'll all send you a box of cream of wheat.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll make you some.
Cream of
'cause
wheat
clearly
is
someone's not making for
disgusting.
you.
That's
right.
what you're describing.
That's not cream of wheat.
No,
Man, my granny made me put sugar on grits, so it's fine. And she makes great grits. Whatever, y'all.
well, Granny know best.
Okay, next question, I guess. This is exactly why I didn't let y'all prep for this. Proudest moment of your career so far?
Ooh.
Let's go.
Back to my nonprofit. So it started off with such a small idea of giving. I raised enough money to give a scholarship to one student, and then 2 months later, we had big partnerships like Target, Lilith NYC, and now to this day, as we're walking into year 3, where we've given a scholarship to 30 students, and we're still progressing. More sponsors. Timberland, New Balance, Centric. That's literally my highlight of my career, even though it has nothing to do with my 9 to 5 and what I do daily. It's about that conversation that we talked about before, about giving back and mentoring that next generation who's like looking at me like, how do I get there? Like, that's my pride and joy at this moment.
I think for me, it's a whole multitude of things, but to make it short, in 2020 I started Drink Mame. Started in March of 2020. April of 2020, I created my own bottles, put labels on it, and I was selling it. And truly, I was doing this to just save up some more enough money to go to Barbados to go see my family because I didn't want to be in America during the pandemic. And so I did that. June of 2020, I launched my business. July of 2020, I was in my first retail store called T-Bar. So I was selling at a T-Bar. And then figured out what I was doing, which was making juice out of my home, was illegal and part of the foodborne illnesses. And they would have called me a food terrorist if someone would have gotten sick, and it's illegal, all that kind of stuff. So I had to stop production. During that time, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do next. We found a building, signed a lease on September 15th of 2020. We opened October 31st of 2020. 5 days before our opening, we didn't know what we were going to do. We barely had $9,000 in our bank account, and we were like, I don't know how we're going to make ends meet. And 5 days before, I got a $25,000 scholarship from American Express, part of their 100 by 100 program. And we have been open since October 31st of 2020. Since then.
Love the whole timeline.
Yeah, take it.
Right. Also, just this last thing, big flex. That $25,000 turned us into a $250,000 business by the end of 2021.
Just drop the mic. Just drop the mic.
Love it.
Yes. I would say for me, like throughout my career, I've always prided myself on mentoring folks and trying to help people who look like me get in the industry. And so I think my proudest moment is always when I'm walking across campus or when I get reached out to by somebody that I mentored and they've landed an entry-level job or an ETW role. And that for me just kind of grounds me back in purpose. And so I always, above the product, above the dope things and places and all the things, it's like being able to impact somebody or have somebody say, oh, wow, when you introduced me, that made an impact in this way. Those are just the kind of cherry on top moments that you can't recreate, and they just pay it forward because you know that person is now equipped to look out for somebody else who can look out for somebody else. And so those moments when they come are always highlights.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so my last one is tied into actually something we have outside. We have a poster outside. It says Black women are, and then it's a space. So it's meant for anyone to add just one word that they would use to describe a Black woman. So my question for you is, what's one word that you use to describe Black women? My word is unlimited. I feel like we are limitless. There is no ceiling. So what's your word?
Soft.
Why?
Why? Oh, soft because we get labeled as the strong Black women all the time. We are expected to hold so much weight. We are expected to carry things on our backs. We're expected to wear many hats. We're expected to multiply, divide, all this kind of stuff. Give up our careers to have kids. Give up our lives to get married. Like all this other stuff. And I think that being a Black woman is a very distinct experience, but we often don't get a chance to be vulnerable or to be soft. And I have been very adamant about making sure that I see my friends in their softness and allow them to be vulnerable, even in my presence. And then also being able to have the strength to also be soft because vulnerability does not come easy. So soft is why I would say, that's why I would say soft.
Love that.
I love that. I would say I'm going back and forth between necessary or essential. Um, I think I must land on essential because it connects to essential oil and things like that. So essential is the word, and I would say that because I think in society, because Black women we exist at the intersection. Oftentimes, resources or conversations always aren't centered on us, or we're not the first kind of person in mind. It's like, okay, if we're going to make things better for Black folks, sometimes those resources get soaked up by men, or when you're in the woman conversation, things get soaked up by white women. So I like the word essential because it kind of puts Black women at the center of conversation where typically we're kind of like overlooked, or we're just kind of a pass through. If you think of an intersection, it's like, oh yeah, did we talk to Black women? Yes. We go on to the next thing. But so I'll say essential.
Thank you.
My word would be multidimensional. And for me, I like that word because there's so many sides to us. Like as Sid was saying, we're soft, we're vulnerable. We are strong at times, but not the whole entire time. You know, there's so many sides to us. And I think that's very important that we can exist in so many ways. Also, we're not a monolith. So there's so many different types of Black women from, if we want to go down a genre list, from like something as simple as like a nerdy Black woman versus I don't know, another type of Black woman. There's so many versions of us, and that's one thing that I think is so beautiful about us, how multidimensional we are.
Thank you all for your words. You all can add your words once we head out of here. I'm actually going to open this up for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand and we'll run the mic around.
Hi. I just want to say first off, thank you all. I felt like, I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like y'all were speaking to me specifically in a lot of these questions. So thank you. But I had a question specifically for you, Cydnie. How did you know, I guess, when you wanted to take that leap as an entrepreneur and for your business? Like when you were home versus, wanting to have your own retail space and things like that. Like what was the aha moment, or like when you knew I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I think that, and I said this in an interview actually last week, but I always say do what feels good. And because if you're following your intuition is your strongest bet. Do what feels good, do what feels right. And I think that was like the biggest thing. I started my business and it was a complete accident that it started, and so I just took the opportunity to kind of like see where it was. I had money invested, but it was something that I was super passionate about, so I didn't mind it. And then everything, because I was moving forward and I kept like overcoming certain obstacles and certain battles, I found myself in a place of everything that I wanted and that I needed presented itself to me all the time. And so I always say, believe in yourself, do what feels good, do what feels right. I didn't quit my 9 to 5 at the time until like I was ready. And I had an exit plan. It was the job I had before. I didn't really want to be there, and I knew I wanted to transition into different spaces. But I always do things based off of like how I'm feeling. How does it feel to quit this job? How does it feel to start this business? And what feeling that when you feel something, if something is causing you anxiety, you'll know the difference between anxiety and excitement, or anxiety and fear, or anxiety and all these other things. So really just listening to yourself. I'm all about, mind, body, spirit, really connecting with yourself and making sure that your whole being feels it and that you're ready to feel it and that you're ready to put your all into it. So once you're in that state, I say go for it. I think I just was like, I have nothing to lose. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know if we're going to live next year. We have no idea what this thing is, but I'm going to try it and just see what happens. And it turned out to be the best thing. And so I just put faith in yourself and do what feels good, and use your resources and just keep pushing through those barriers. That's like the number one thing. Keep pushing through the barriers because you never know what's on the other side of it.
whether that be like career or like life wise? What would y'all say is like your
Say the question one more time. I'm sorry.
biggest lesson or skill that you took from your biggest failure?
I want to say for me, the skill has been like adaptability and resilience. For me, I've been through so many different chapters in my career, and then also locations in my career. Like I lived in 3 countries and 6 cities throughout the past 10 years. So I think with all of that comes highs and lows. And for me, I've just always been very adaptable, especially in spaces like Switzerland, which is very bizarre from a black girl from West Philly. So I think, yeah, those two things are characteristics that stuck to me as I've navigated no's or failures or rejections, moving to new places, doubt, all of that, adaptability and resilience.
It's a really good question. I would say for me, the biggest thing that I take away is just the importance of balance for me. I think anytime that I've failed or I've been doing too much, I haven't been necessarily true to my morning routine, waking up, making sure that I'm meditating, praying. Like anytime that there's been a failure, it's been when I reflect, it's like I've been off personally. Like I haven't been balanced within myself, and so then I've started to chase something, or I'm exercising or doing something outside of who I am, and that's where the failure comes. And so I think the lesson that I would share is like whatever for you makes you feel the most balanced, makes you feel the most centered and connected to you. For me, that's God. Making sure that I'm prioritizing that above everything. I think we can get so busy, we can be doing a million things, but I've found like, oh wow, when I trace back the failures, like, yeah, you was way too far to the left, and you need to make sure that you're prioritizing those things that keep you. And yeah.
I think failure, it depends on what you consider a failure. Um because I think personally, like, my ego tells me that something's a failure before my right mind comes to the forefront. It's like, that's not a failure, it's a pivot. Um and I I'm going to share something because, like, I recently have been going through this internal battle where I feel like I failed because I have to make a super big change to my business. And I don't think I think often, like, small black businesses don't always get enough funding or the enough support or enough resources. And so I've always tried to, like, fight for our resources and fight for the things that we deserve, and, like, make sure we're always on tip top shape. And so recently we had an opportunity come to where we would really be able to scale our inventory, but also two, like, our operations, our productivity, and everything. But it's a financial investment to do so. And so, but we also have a retail store, full of employees currently. So I've had to make this decision recently of, do I take this plunge now and essentially kind of shift everything that Drink Mom is right now and run with it, or do I pause and do I wait till I have the money in order to take a part of this opportunity? And I've had to really have this, like, conversation with myself, like, this is not a failure, this is a pivot. This is not a failure, this is a pivot. This is something that is going to make your business 10 times better, and you're doing this for future you. So I've had to really, like, come to my senses in that regard, because I am next week we're shutting down our retail, and we're only going made to order, just so we can really focus on operations, really focus on building, and focus on this new process. And it's a huge process, and I just know personally, as a small black business, we do not have the bandwidth to do both. So I've had to make a lot of big decisions for our business in order for us to thrive in other ways. And just because we're shutting a certain part down doesn't mean that part can never come back to life. It just means for now we have to make decisions that, one, fit with our finances, and two, fit with our bandwidth. I think a lot of black businesses also, like, struggle with mental health because they're trying to play this game with a lot of our white counterparts, with what they're able to do and what they have access to, when we're, like, current always fighting this race. But I think that coming back to myself and being like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I'm at in my journey, this is not a failure, this is a pivot. I have to get out of my ego. This is not about me. There's a bigger purpose. There's tons of other things to be able to do, and this is not the end. So I think that it just depends on what you think is a failure. I think that I've come out of a lot of thinking a lot of things were failures, and they were just really things that I just needed to rework or revisit. I think a failure is when I just completely decide, just because I'm overwhelmed, to just like stop and never revisit it again and give up. But I haven't done that. So I don't think I failed. I think I've just pivoted.
Okay, let's give the a round of applause for the panelists and the moderator tonight. So for you guys that don't know me, my name is Nakai, one of the co-founders for BCC. Just want to say thank you again to the panelists and moderators tonight for being part of this. So for you guys that don't know what BCC stand for, or who we are, recently we came to the school originally starting off as a club, and we just seen ourselves growing much more than that, becoming an organization, highlighting us students in the program, and also just at the same time want to build in the community. So this is definitely something we want to continue going forward. With that being said, outside we have more pizza for you guys, some water, lemonade, stuff like that for refreshments. We're able to network, talk, chop it up. We'll also be selling some tote bags as well. So you guys want to pre-order some tote bags, we have that. And let you guys know as well, something we've been doing in the community has been going around Chinatown feeding the homeless. So on Sunday at 11 o'clock, we'll be walking around Chinatown feeding the homeless. Whoever wants to join or whoever wants to donate to BCC to help out with that. So again, let's just give the moderator and the panelists a round of applause. Good.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.